Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you're calling from. It's great to see you joining today's Getting Started session. For those of you who I've not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Mike. I am one of the co-founders here at Waybook. And in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be running through the fundamentals of how you can most effectively get started with Waybook. So throughout today's session, there's multiple ways that you can get involved, get in contact, and keep this as interesting and dynamic as possible. One of them is, of course, the chat function. So please feel free to message any thoughts, questions, heckle if you'd like, anything you like within the chat. We also have the fantastic Sophia here on Waybook's side, so she's there to answer any questions that you might have as you come up. If you want to put a Q&A to me, a question to me to answer in today's session, you can also use the Q&A panel. And we also have the polls function with a couple of polls coming your way, which will kind of just help give a sense of who is in the room and how we can better tailor this session for you today as well. So I'm seeing some familiar names here. So if you are, if we've spoken already, it's great to see you. And if you're new, then welcome to the world of Waybook. Now, let's crack on without further ado, as you're filling out the answers to that poll, which should have just fired on your side there. We basically are going to run through the fundamentals today in covering structuring your Waybook to begin with. We always like to say that structure is everything. So we're really going to make sure that you have the full understanding of what a structure is in the Waybook world, how that can work for your business, and also how we can continue to grow that. We are then going to be looking at how you can create compelling content. Gone are the days of long, boring PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, things that people don't read. And we're going to welcome in the lots of different types of engaging content that you can have within your Waybook. And then we're also going to look at how you can build your team. So this is the permissions, the access, the level of control that you can have with your Waybook to basically make sure that the right people see the right information and have access that they need. And then finally, in the remaining moments, we are going to be looking at some of the power features that hide within Waybook to make sure that you can more effectively get your business on the same page and get everything to value as quickly as possible. But before we do that, let's just take a brief second to have a quick look at what success looks like. So with success, we get to speak to lots of different Waybook customers all of the time. And we love hearing these stories of businesses like yours that have really systemized, optimized, and benefited from using Waybook on your account. One of those that I've spoken to recently was the fantastic Laura from an agency called Eastside Co. And Laura said that the agency has scaled from 40 to 95 people in less than a year. And they did this by systemizing all of their knowledge, their procedures, their policies, their onboarding docs, everything into their Waybook. And because they were able to find so much efficiency in onboarding and keeping people consistent, they were also able to increase and expand out their agency offering despite having more people without increasing their management overhead as well, which is obviously a huge benefit and something that we hope to unlock for all businesses using Waybook. And another great example story we've had recently is from the fantastic Tim from a company called Burrito Kitchen. Tim basically had this amazing opportunity to launch a new chain of salad bars, actually here in London. But the catch was that they had to launch 4 salad bars in just one day. So in order to do this, he had to develop entirely new operations, new offering, new products, hire new team, train new people, and launch them in multiple sites in one day. So of course, the way they did that was they created that knowledge, focused on the business, structured and centralized that information, and then they were able to kind of get people to onboard themselves and successfully launch on these one days, utilizing Waybook on the mobile and on various different apps to make sure that people had access to the information that they needed when they needed it. And it was so successful that they were able to then roll that concept out to 4 new locations in the following 3 weeks as well. So I'm not sure if there's anybody else that run burrito shops or salad bar on today's call, but you get the sentiment and the sort of success that we're trying to drive for you and your business. So let's jump in actually and how we can do that. And we're going to start by looking at the structure within your team. Now, in order to put some real kind of flavor into this, let me just share my screen into an example Waybook account, and I can share with you here what I'm actually talking about when I say structure. Now, structure is very much focused here on the left-hand side. It's almost the tiering of your knowledge, the taxonomy of your information that structures within your Waybook. Now, this is actually quite different for different businesses because obviously you might have more information in particular departments or areas. It's also really specific based on what you're trying to achieve within your Waybook. So if you're looking for just centralizing your policies, it will be policy heavy. Just your procedures on particular types of departments within your business. Or if you're looking at centralizing all of your knowledge, which most people do within Waybook, then of course it will have a broader scope of your structure as well. But to kind of orientate you into the different tiers of information, Waybook basically has 4 different tiers of content. We call them your categories, your subjects, your documents, and your steps. So you don't need to worry too much about remembering those specific words, but let's actually just see which one is which. Now, on this very top level, this is what we call a category. A category is pretty much the business unit of information or the broadest collection of your knowledge. Within this example, we have your welcome documents, your sales and marketing, your HR and training. But of course, all of this will be customized for you and your individual business. The next layer down, you see that we have our subjects. And the subject is pretty much a folder of information. It can normally be departmental or functional information. So here we will have your sales handbook. It will be your marketing handbook, your perhaps customer support handbook. But also at this subject level, you might have knowledge that runs across the business. So things like your HR policies or the welcome documents that everybody will share and have access to. And then the final tier, which we're seeing on this left-hand side, is what we call the document. Now, you can think of the document almost like that individual unit of information. It is essentially the equivalent of a PowerPoint, a PDF, a Word doc, whatever that may be. And essentially, each document would pretty much be either your core policy, your core procedure, or a piece of information that you're looking to share. So within the sales handbook subject, you'll see that it's made up of all of these documents of the different procedures that we do. Lead generation, conducting sales calls, how we create sales proposals. But also, if we're looking into the policies subject, then the individual documents will actually be those individual policies. And then again, if we look at an example of an information document within the welcome docs, you might have the purpose and background, the company history, meeting the team. Now, the final level of your structure is actually within the document itself. So you can see here, as I click into an individual document, you'll see that it's made up with a series of steps. And a step is essentially the broken down part of that document. So if it's a procedure, it might be step 1, 2, 3. If it's a piece of documentation or information, it might actually be, you know, the background or the component parts, the vision, mission, the company, the organization. Now, as we go through this as a reader, because I'm in reader mode here, I'm able to kind of click through, read, watch, review, mark as complete. And as I mark this as complete, it's just noticing or registering that I have marked an individual step as complete. So if I get distracted, pulled away, or I'm pausing on my onboarding, I can jump back into exactly where I left off. But also you on the admin side will be able to see who has and hasn't seen what, when they last looked at it, what they've last seen. Now, also within an individual document, you can have various different tests and assessments, and we'll come on to that very briefly when we're looking at actually creating a good document. So these are your fundamental structures of your Waybook. And one thing I would say is try and utilize our support and our AI creation as much as you possibly can. So where I've just toggled over into the edit mode here, you'll be able to come into AI Creator. And if we go down into AI Structure Creator, you've got 2 options. One of them is basically selecting from a list. Now, this is basically looking at different types of businesses. So let's say a group practice, and you can generate a preview of what this piece of information will look like from a structural perspective. But if none of these fully fit what you're looking to achieve, you can actually then utilize Waybook AI. And let's say write a playbook for a let's say a therapist practice. The more information you give with your Waybook here, the more it will be able to actually customize this to your business. So you can share how many people you have, what different departments you have, what core focuses you have. And essentially what this will do is it will create out the perfect structure that it believes that your business should have. Now, again, these are your subjects and your individual documents. And whilst these documents will actually be blank to start with, it essentially means that it just becomes your to-do list, the core documents that you actually want to create and the core things. So I'm actually just going to untick all of these and just put this therapy practice playbook into our Waybook for now. So you'll see that whatever you select will create that in your left-hand side. And in essence, that answers all of your questions and does all of the work for you with regards to creating structure for your business. But just as a recap on our structure, and again, I'm always keeping my eyes out on the Q&A and the chat to see whether or not anybody has any other thoughts or information. But from a structure perspective, when you think about your subjects, try and think about what core or areas of knowledge and information that you have, whether that be departmental, whether that be your collections of insights, or that knowledge that runs across the business. I always like to recommend at this early stage, if you're just getting started with your Waybook, actually don't worry about your categories just yet. Within your Waybook, everything is easy to drag, drop, easily move around. So if you just focus on those kind of subject areas, then you can actually organize them better moving forward as you actually have that content in. So we've identified those core subject areas. This might be the 3 or 4 collections of knowledge that you want. And you can very much focus this based on what you're trying to achieve. If you're looking to onboard a new marketing person, then perhaps you can have marketing, welcome documents, and policies. And those 3 collections of insights are basically going to be the core piece of knowledge you need to do that task. And then you can continue to build out your Waybook beyond that. But secondly, now let's look at the individual documents within those subjects. And those documents are essentially answering the question, what are the specific insights or activities you're looking to share? So going back to the fact of us wanting to onboard a marketing document, a marketing person, we can basically say, well, what are the 5 fundamental activities or pieces of knowledge we need that person to know, do, or understand? And that essentially just becomes your document headings. That could be your brand guidelines. That can be your creating social media posts procedure. And then that might be your individual procedures, so your individual SOPs, or it can be those activities and actions across the board. Now, the final step within that within that structure that we're creating can be those individual steps. So if you do know and understand that knowledge, procedure, policy, process, then actually you can go in and you can almost bullet point the steps of that on a Waybook perspective using the steps. And that's essentially what are the specifics that you need people to know. So be the step-by-step instructions or that core knowledge and insight. Now, once we've got that essentially puts us in the really fortunate position of basically having the to-do list of documents. And actually, I always prefer to start with less documents. So we're really focusing on the most valuable and important ones that we want to begin with, because then we can really start to understand what content we need and how we create that content as well. So just jumping back into our document here, let's have a little look at how we create content. So once again, we want to be in edit mode so we can see everything here. And as I mentioned before, you can drag and drop and move things around when you're in edit mode. So you essentially can then start to create your core knowledge based on the ones that we've created. So there's multiple ways that you can do this. And if we just go into this, let's say we'll go into the client intake process for this new therapy kind of practice playbook that we're creating. You basically have 4 or 5 options in how you want to start. Firstly, you can just delegate that to somebody else. So you can add somebody as the document owner, and then they can become responsible for creating that or co-creating that with you. By the way, that assigning the owner may also be assigning it to you. You then have the option of saying, you know what, let's just start from a template. Let's look into the template library and just see whether or not we have a relevant template that can work for you and the business. If you actually have the existing knowledge, then you can start by importing either from a Waybook doc or from perhaps a recorded SOP elsewhere. Or you can actually start with an AI creator. Before we jump into the AI creator, I'm just going to run through the fundamentals of how we create content, because essentially we like to do this in pretty much 3 different views. One of them is creating the structural outline of that document. So essentially, I always like to start creating every document with the purpose and background of that document. And in that purpose and background, I basically want to say what the document covers, why it's important, and once you've read that document, what can you do with the information? Now, identifying those core focuses really enables us as an author to focus our mind on what we will and won't cover. And you may actually then want to delete this step afterwards if you don't feel like it's necessary, and it just becomes a creation and editing tool. Or, of course, you can actually then leave that in there, and then that will focus the mind of our readers as they move through your documentation. So I always recommend starting out with those that purpose and background. And then you can essentially use this plus new step icon to add a new step in. So this might be step 1, step 2. And essentially what we're doing when we're creating this is just thinking through the procedure, the policy, the core elements that we want to put in. And then again, you can almost just bullet point or brain dump that core piece of knowledge that you want to put in. So again, we can add in kind of open the files, whatever. This is a very bad example here. But essentially, the reason why I'm breaking it down in this way is as soon as we've created that structure, created those documents, and actually put the fundamental information in, then really the hard work of centralizing is done. We really like to encourage you to note for yourself and then edit for someone else. So I might have briefly created out this piece of knowledge and content, but I'm actually at the point where I'm thinking, do you know what? I don't want to share that with anyone. So now I'm going to go back through that knowledge and say, well, actually, how can I make this information better? Should I put an image in here? Should I put a video in here? And ultimately, we can try and think about how we can optimize that information. And that's the second iteration of coming back to that same document. So whilst we really recommend that this is the process that you make, obviously that requires you to have the understanding of the knowledge and information. But say we don't have a document to import, and actually we don't even really have the fundamental understanding of what we want to do within that or how to document that procedure. There's 2 ways that Waybook can help you create and structure that. One of them is utilizing Waybook Shots. And Shots is essentially an SOP capture tool that enables you to start recording. And as you click around your tool, your platform, whatever you're looking to do, you'll see here it's actually taking screenshots and highlighting the core pieces to do, the core pieces of information, clicking on, typing on, how to do a job. And essentially you're able to then record that shot and then import that directly within your Waybook. So that's a really great way of capturing a standard operating procedure to directly put within your Waybook. But say, for example, we don't even know what to do and it's not something on there, you can go into your Waybook AI creator, and actually this will then really understand the core piece of information that you're looking to create. It will pull your document title, the description you've made for the document, and it will also pull in additional pieces of information that you've saved within your Waybook settings, so it has a unified tone and understands more about the information. So we'll see here it's actually created out this core 5-step process of our intake process. Now, this is a pretty good start, and it means that we're not starting from a blank piece of paper. And of course, within this, we can then jump in and say scheduling the first session. So now maybe we want to add in more information. And this second part of going through and optimizing the knowledge and how we share that information is done from this Waybook created procedure rather than from a blank piece of paper. So before I summarize on that, the 2 other hidden features within Waybook that I think are really important for us to understand here is try and think beyond the text. So often we will just create these words, but on that second pass, we have to think about how we can more appropriately share that piece of knowledge or information. Now, by clicking on the plus icon here, we'll see all of the different pieces of information that we can add into that. We can add in checkboxes, emojis, tables, PDFs, web embeds, whatever you want. But essentially, that's a great way for us to really bring this dynamic content to life rather than just be lots of reams and reams of documents to read. Now, if you want to reword this or expand this or turn this into a process or whatever you want, again, you can highlight any information and turn that into an AI action. And whatever you want, it can actually really create clear, consistent, unified information across your Waybook with the click of a button and expanding, summarizing, whatever you need. That's all within the power of Waybook and available on all of your accounts as well. Now, the final piece of information is once we've created this and we say this is a pretty good intake process, we're happy with this now. If you want to be able to hold somebody to account or attest their knowledge on that information, you can actually create a new test step within that document. And ultimately, you can then choose what pieces of information that you want them to confirm, what questions to ask, what multiple choice answers to provide. Now, if you don't have time or you're not entirely sure what to ask, again, you can create that with Waybook AI, where Waybook will then understand and read that document, identify the most poignant parts of that information, and then it will essentially create multiple choice questions for you to then just automatically add that to your document. So when we publish this, that will then be shared with your team in the clear, structured information with all of the proof and evidence that you need to see on the back of them as well. So I've covered a lot of ground there in terms of how to create dynamic content. Let's just do a quick recap on the fundamentals. One of them is really identifying out your purpose and your outputs. What do you want people to know and what do you want people to do by the end of it? That really manifests itself in the way of having that document purpose step and also that skeleton or bullet points of the content. Then on that second pass, we want to go through and ask the question, what is the best way of delivering that content? Really focus on noting for yourself and then editing for someone else. And in that, you can think beyond the text. So replace things with an image, replace things with a video, add in a Waybook shot SOP where you go through as and when you like. But ultimately, we want to try and make sure that we're being as concise and unambiguous as possible, because ultimately, when we're sharing this information with our team, we want them to know what to do, know how to do it, and ultimately be able to onboard, train, and stay consistent on their own. Now, at the final part of that, we can then look, and this I normally would say this is the third part, the third iteration, is to really look at that proof and importance within your business, of that knowledge within your business. So once we identify those specifics that we want people to know, what actually should we add in terms of a test or assessment or a knowledge confirmation step, which you can also do within Waybook. And maybe you also want to outline what the required actions and next steps are as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's your kind of 10,000-foot view of your structure and also how to create and optimize your content. Let's have a look at the final section we're going to look at today, and that is how you build out your teams. So, one thing that you will probably already know within your Waybook is that you can have full access and control of exactly who sees what and who controls what within your Waybook. So if I can do that on this members section, you can manage all of this within your groups. So what we like to think here is that within your groups, it's a quick way of you actually deciding who should have access to what, which essentially means you can create this marketing executive group, and we say these 3 people have access to these 8 subjects. And what that means is that you're able to then be really specific with what they can access, and you can just add more content there. But you can actually toggle that level of control on that as well. So say, for example, we want them to be able to edit the company messaging, which means they can go into edit, they can make suggested changes, but they can't publish it to other people. If, for example, you want to have them have publish access, that means that this group can publish this client A subject, and which means that they can hit publish and they can share that with other people. Now, we highly recommend that you set up your groups because it's something that you do once and then actually everything is done. moving forward. If you actually don't know where to start or what a group should look like for you, Waybook, based on your information, will actually be able to identify the groups that it suggests you should have within your business. You can create those groups and then add the permissions on top of it. But if you're not ready to create your groups, you can just add individual members. And we always recommend that you add in a few admin members to start with to kind of share this load of creating your content out there. But we can always click on any individual user, and within that individual user, we can see what group they're a part of, what content they have access to, and what flows they have access to, which I'll share with you very briefly as well. Now, when you're looking at this core piece of knowledge on an individual user perspective, that basically means that you can really specify what they do and don't see outside of your groups. So even if you've set up all of the permissions in groups, but you just want to give Angela here an additional view, edit access on this document or information, you can then add that in, or you can override the group's permission on that individual user. So that's a very high level perspective into your groups. If you did want any additional support on that, please feel free to reach out to our team. We're always on hand to kind of help you get the best structure for your business and make sure that everybody has access and control. Two questions I'll answer in advance of anybody asking, because I know they often come up, is essentially, firstly, we can just say, what's the difference between edit and publish? Now, edit is the ability for me to toggle over into this edit. I can add new content, new information. As I'm adding that new piece of knowledge and information, then you'll notice that everything is auto-saving. And I'm actually able to publish. So I have publish access, which means I can click that publish button and share it with the team. If I didn't have publish access, I would have the ability to request review, which essentially means that I can come into here, I can choose who should review that. And once I submit that for review, excuse me, once I submit that for review, whoever I've sent that to will then be able to see that information, come in, and then publish that change. Once you publish that change, you can then decide whether it's a small, minor change that actually we don't need to identify and notify people, or if it's a major change, you can publish that, and that will essentially send everybody a notification that says, hey, Jade, there's a new part of this content, or hey, Mark, there's a new piece of information here. And then you will be able to go into reader mode, and it will just untick that one piece of information that you've changed and updated. So that is the fundamentals of setting up your permissions. The one final thing which is connected to this is your flows. Now, a flow is an additional way of customizing your Waybook for individual team members or groups of team members. It essentially enables you to create a custom learning pathway through your content. So if we look at this therapist onboarding, for example, you'll see that we've created these 9 steps that we want people to do. And if I go into edit mode here, we can add additional pieces of documents, we can change the order, we can even enable deadlines, and enabling those deadlines will customize the order, the flow, the notifications, and the dashboard for that person. And you can also add additional tasks. So even if you want somebody to do something as part of a learning flow or an onboarding flow that isn't within your Waybook, you can say book a call with Mike and then add a link to Mike's booking link here. And then that will just sit as part of that person's onboarding flow, which of course you can then manage in tracking and reporting. So this is the more advanced side of customizing that experience for your users. Again, if there's any thoughts or questions you've got on that, please let us know here or reach out to support or any of our available content to make sure that you can set up your flows and groups in the most effective way for your team. So let's recap on that as I'm diving deeper into it. As we're building out our team, I always recommend that you start out with some admin allies. Think who else in the business is responsible for creating content. That could be department heads or function owners, or it can actually just be people who have operational minds that really think about things in clean, clear, and consistent ways. The second thing there is also looking at your team structuring. What does your team look like in the real world? And actually then try and mirror your groups to look like that in the most the cleanest way possible. So they might be your departmental teams, they might be your different responsibility levels, perhaps location levels as well. And that essentially means that once you've got a group for those people, you can add people into multiple groups if you wanted, but the more it looks like your real business and your structure, the easier it is for you and your team to navigate. And then finally, you can think about what level of access and control you want for your individual team members. So who should have more access and who should have more control over your content? And that's where you decide whether you want them to be able to be an admin on your Waybook or they have edit access to your content. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our 3 sections of your creating the ideal structure, building the best dynamic content, and then creating your team. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A here. So if you do have any other thoughts or questions, please do answer that, and Sophia or I will answer that as quickly as possible. But for the next few minutes, let me just share with you some of my favorite bonus features that live with inside Waybook. So one thing that we've shared is some of the fantastic AI features that lives alongside Waybook. But if, for example, you've not got a, you're looking for a template for a document and actually AI isn't quite getting that level of confidence that you want, we actually have lots of different templates within your Waybook. Now, your Waybook templates are ones that our internal process experts have created for you to actually provide a really consistent and clear vision of business of documentation based on best practice that we see across thousands of businesses. But say, for example, you have a very particular way that you would like to create a standard operating procedure or a policy for your business. What you're able to do is you can turn any of your documents into an internal template for your team. So what this essentially looks like is if I go into this document here, you'll see that hidden we have a Studio 6 SOP. Now, what this essentially is a document that I have then turned into a template by going into template and sharing, and I'm able to then convert that into a document. So if I go into a normal document and go into manage, templates and sharing, you'll see here that I can convert this document into a template. If I convert that document into a template, what it means is that when anybody enters the template library, you'll see that these branded, customized, specific SOP templates, or whatever that may be, will be accessible for all of my editors. That means that they will start from our policy, from our procedure, from our SOP framework, which means that they can actually continue to create more knowledge and information, but still aligning to your core images and flows. So that's a really great way of extending out or utilizing the AI and the Waybook templates, but making it more relevant and consistent for your team. Another thing that we absolutely love as a user of Waybook, as well as the Waybook team, is actually making sure that your knowledge is as close and accessible to your team as possible. So yes, we'll spend this time structuring it, but here are some of the fundamentals of how people will get access to that knowledge. Say, for example, somebody wants to know where the logo files are. Instead of asking me, they're able to actually just search logo, get instant access to that piece of knowledge or documentation, and very quickly they can actually find that information. Now, of course, that will also live within the browser extensions, within the mobile apps, but we actually have Teams and Slack's integration, which means that if somebody's asking me a question, I can actually search my Waybook within that interface, and without leaving Teams or Slack, /Waybook write logo, and it will search our Waybook within that chat interface that I can then just send that document. But taking it one step further than that in terms of making sure your team has the very close access, once we've got the information in your Waybook, Waybook turns all of your knowledge into the equivalent of ChatGPT for your team by basically turning it into an AI-powered chatbot. So instead of asking for the logo, I might be saying, what is our main brand color? And what you'll notice here is that it won't just send me to the document, but it will instantly answer that question. And this is fluent on your business information, private to your team, and specific based on the permissions that that person who's searching for has looked for. So I can see here that the main brand color is Hopper Blue. The color hex code is here, so I can replicate it. And I can continue to ask and answer questions with our knowledge base, which basically means that everybody has a 24/7 fully informed manager. And of course, you can always source that back to that core piece of knowledge and information within your Waybook as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a load more hiding within your Waybook accounts. There's lots of different ways of creating and extrapolating your content to other people, from the feedback cycles to making sure that you can have editors communicating and collaborating in your documents, making sure you've got full version history, making sure that you can actually share your documents with people, even if they're not in your Waybook, by enabling the public sharing and sending them like a Google Doc that has that clear and consistent information moving forward. There are thousands of things you can do within Waybook that ultimately is designed to help you systemize and structure your knowledge in a clear and consistent way that empowers your team moving forward. So hopefully this is some of the fundamental steps that will get you well on your way to having success with Waybook. But as you go, please remember that you are not alone. You will have a getting started with Waybook in your Waybook account. You've got access as much as you need to the Waybook support and the help center. So that is available on the question mark icon in the top right of your Waybook. You also can actually interact with our help center using Ask. So if you go to your Waybook Ask and select the source information, not your Waybook, but turn it into the Waybook Help Center, then you can chat with our help center in the same way that you'll be able to do with your own internal documents. We obviously have all of the Waybook templates, and if you have specific templates you need that aren't in the library, then please do let us know. We actually provide free product coaching. So if you wanted to book a call with one of the team and they'll help navigate, orientate, and structure your Waybook, that will happen. But please don't forget to also use your internal team members and expertise. This won't always be one person's job within the organization. Yes, often there'll be one or two people who are championing and driving Waybook forward, but do get other people to contribute and collaborate with on your Waybook. And if you've got to this point and you think, Mike, this is great, I'm in, I need it, but I just do not have the time or capacity, then we also have our full-time Waybook consultants and migration specialists here, where you can either send your documents or say, we don't know what we have, we don't know what we need, but this is the challenge. And our consultants will actually run that full process for you and help you build out your Waybook and do it for you to hand that back to you to have your business on the same page. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am keeping my eye for any other thoughts or questions. I believe they've all been answered. But if there are anything else, then now is the time. If not, please don't feel like you should be a stranger with us. Message us, chat with us, jump on calls, and we are always focused and excited to help you get your business on the same page. So without further ado, thank you very much for your time and attention today. We really wish you the very best in structuring your single source of truth with Waybook. And we look forward to seeing how you can unlock so much more of the opportunity hiding within your business and really get to enjoying some smooth scaling. So thank you so much, and we wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care now.